Yeah, I know. It's not gonna do it.
Are we gonna?
It's possibly just fire. All right. Oh, and here we are for an episode of Dualistic Unity Raw, live from Grandma's cottage. Just kidding. We have a new high definition camera, which is capturing the new environment of the podcast, which I'm very excited about. It's a rainy ass day, which is actually kind of nice. You know, it's funny because I don't find rainy days to be depressing. Like they're gray, sure. You know, you're kind of huddled in your coat. Maybe you got a little bit more limited mobility, but the fact is that it's really just some time with yourself. It really is. You're just not as distracted. I mean, you're not so keen on where to go, so you get a chance to focus on where you are. And maybe where you are is huddled in a bus stop somewhere, and it's pissing rain. But the fact is that that's your time. That's your time. You know, enjoy it as much as you can. I mean, yeah, the weather might be damp and whatnot, but you'll get home. You'll get somewhere dry. It's not going to last forever. Just enjoy the moment as much as you can. And that just means not having an opinion of it. Just let it be what it is. Just let it be what it is. But yeah, it's good to be back. It's been a little while. We were away. There was some stuff. Got a little sick for a little bit, and then after that, we just had some time to reflect, visit with some relatives, spent some time with my daughter, and of course, checked out some business related stuff and ideas. Met with some cool people, possibly having an actor join the Dualistic Unity team in some capacity in the near future because we have some exciting stuff planned there. But yeah, it's been just an incredible week of change. It's so funny how you can do nothing but sit out for a week, and yet the world just keeps spinning. And what I found is that in this last week, while we have all been self reflecting or working on our own things, sometimes, well, I've been stretching a lot more, which has been quite nice. I've been so caught up in the hubbub of everything for the last several months that I got out of the habit. I want to say habit, but I lost sight. I guess that's better of the benefit of stretching and taking the time for myself, and so I've been doing that a little bit more. You know, but nonetheless, it's so interesting how the other things that have been happening in our lives without us being there have all seem to kick into high gear as well. And what I mean is that there's a bunch of places that normally that we go and we know the people and we interact with them and there's a certain degree of a mood or a vibe that we like to carry around with us. But by virtue of us carrying around that vibe, it influences the reality. And so all of a sudden we were absent for a week. And in some cases, all hell went loose. It just fell apart. And it was just because people had the space to do what they wanted with that space. And I think it's easy to forget that we have that power. It's easy to forget that we're all in it together and that when we're not looking at it that way, we can really create havoc for ourselves. You know, I really enjoy that part of my life. I enjoy the fact that I can go into a space and be uplifting as a result rather than as an intention. That just by virtue of me not having a great deal of weight, it's easy to see other people and to recognize where they're making their lives hard and to recognize where they're making things heavy and to just not add to that. You know, and it's funny how not adding to that can sometimes help them kind of let a little bit of it go. You know, but it's just that. It's just being there. So it's been interesting, and I'm looking forward to getting back into the mix, back into the local businesses and the local friends that we've made. I'm looking forward to getting back into the social life because you know it's great to have a period of reflection, but it's also really good to get out there and fucking stop taking shit so fucking seriously. But admittedly, a lot of the reflection has been don't take shit so seriously. So it's good to be back. Hello, everyone.
Oh, that's probably the most helpful reminder is you don't have to take yourself so seriously as you go. And it's great to be back. It feels like it's been a really long time. It hasn't even been that long, but yeah, it's funny when you take a step back. It can help you to remember that, it's not always about continuing to do so many things. Like not doing something is as much doing something, and sometimes taking some extra space to just sit back for a bit, let things settle. And I think in those moments when you do take a step back, it's like that's when, new opportunities tend to arise. Like you said, the world keeps spinning, things keep happening. There's been shifts, local shifts in the community that now, we were able to get a little bit more clarity on because we took a step back, and then that can shift how we move forward with things. And it's nice to have that space sometimes, and to see that, it's not always about continuing to push, continuing to go through. And we just recorded, not live, but recorded season 6, episode 41.
Woo!
One more episode
Hell
of
yeah.
season 6 before we're into season 7. And the period, the last week, I mean, as much as there was sickness and overcoming that, once there was just the space that was left, last couple of days, it's been really nice to kind of see that there are lots of directions that we can take this to. We're adding guests. We're having, we've taken a bit of a break the last couple months, but we got some really cool guests coming up, and just reprioritizing the conversation, really coming back to the ground, coming back to reality, coming back to what's real, and the opportunities available with that. And there's been a number of opportunities that have been seen, I think, more clearly in the community, and some more creative thinking has been able to happen a little bit more easily because there was just some more space to sit back. So it's been nice to have that, but it's just as nice, if not even nicer, to be back chatting about what's been going on, about life.
Yeah. Hey everybody. It feels really good to be back, and I think a lot of that comes from, enjoying the break in a deep way. It's I used to rush and want to get to the next step, and that was always the priority, was just trying to get somewhere, and because it meant something about me. And so, I have found a deepening appreciation for stillness, for resting, for taking those breaks. And so it feels really great to be back. And it felt really good to, take some time to, just spend, not rushing, spend some solo time, and focus on, nourishing and paying attention, and giving some more time to the intimate experience of me. So I'm glad to be able to, bring like a renewed energy to the guests that we're going to be having, to the projects that we're involved with, to the new partnerships we're considering, to, like just the new arenas that we're going to be jumping into. Like there is so much that is happening, and it's really cool, and I'm glad that we get to share it, and encourage all of you to do the same. That having this conversation and sharing all our adventures is fantastic, but it is just as awesome to listen to the adventures that have nothing to do with me, and yet feel like I am cheering life on, in this process.
Yeah. I wanted to take a moment, actually, just because our original intention last week was to go camping in Tofino. Unfortunately, due to illness, we were not able to do that. But a couple of intrepid members of the Dualistic Unity community went out anyway And they fucking did it, and they camped, and they enjoyed their time. And I just wanted to give them a shout out and say, well done. We're glad that you took advantage of that opportunity and managed to get out and experience one of the most beautiful places in the world. I hope that you enjoyed your time and the period of self-reflection that obviously goes with being out in the middle of fucking nowhere. I don't know how busy it was out there, but it doesn't really matter, because when you're in your campsite at night, it really does feel like it's just you as the whole universe. So I just wanted to give them a shout out and say, thanks for taking advantage of that. I'm glad at least a version of me did manage to get out there. And aside from that, I want to mention quickly that we only have 2 tickets left for the Port Alberni full retreat that is coming up as of November 2nd. I'm saying this just because those tickets they went really fast. We have had some applications that we're still considering, but if you would like to put in an application to come to this retreat, please do so. Just go to the QR code that's on the screen, or you can go to dualisticulunity.com and check out the retreat details. It's going to be amazing. So we would love to see you there. There's whale watching. There's going to be a massage therapist available on site, which is great. There's going to be live music, some yoga. We're going for walks in a provincial park. And by provincial park, I just mean a really woody area with a nice dirt roads. Goes right by this beautiful river where sometimes you'll see bald eagles and stuff just flying around. It's magical, is what I'm saying. And then we have pool, we have karaoke, we have the dopest gazebo that you could possibly hang in. It's got a little wood stove. It really is just an incredible experience. We've done this twice before. This is going to be our 3rd event in Port Alberni, and I could not be more excited for it. So if you haven't already put in your application, definitely do so, and we'll be happy to let you know about the tickets. There are 2 double beds left. All the other bedrooms have been taken. The king bedroom has been taken. Everything else has been taken. So there are only 2 double beds left. And of course, those double beds are in shared rooms, but you are only sharing with one other person. And there is a private bathroom in each and every bedroom. So it's a wonderful chance to get to know people, to really open up, to have a place to chat with somebody. It's almost like going camping as a teenager, out with the Boy Scouts or the Girl Scouts or something like that. You got your bunk mate.
Summer
It's dope.
camp.
Yeah, exactly. And this is very much like that. It's a big sleepover to a very large degree. But that said, I also wanted to talk a little bit about some thoughts I've been having. See, for me, it's really interesting because I went through so many different versions of who I wanted to see myself as, whether it was good or bad. And the fact is, I wanted to see myself that way. That when I finally hit the wall and realized it's not any of them, and that what remains is everything that is, that didn't turn into an idea. Like, I was very wary of that because I knew anything that I consider everything to be isn't it. Can't be, right? It's immediately an idea. It'd be like saying, oh yeah, no, this is the universe. It's like, yeah, which part? I'm like, you're talking about like this, like right here? Like, this is a big fucking place, Like, it's too large. It's too unfathomable to really understand. And that is exactly why I never really got lost in the whole I am God thing. Because that's almost like a tongue-in-cheek joke, right? Because even God's not God, right? Any more than the universe is the universe. Like, these are concepts, these are ideas. Like, to say that, you are what remains is accurate, and yet not, because the you you're talking about isn't actually you, right? That's why I like Alan Watts, his whole thing, eventually you'll recognize that the thinker is nothing more than another thought. And that's exactly it, you're just here. And so I think it helps to keep that in mind, that they're just concepts, they're just playthings. It's really not about any of that, because you can't think about you can't think about anything without oversimplifying it. You can't think about something without limiting it. You can't think about something without putting it in a box and making assumptions. You just can't. None of us can. And so it helps to remember that when you're thinking about, I am everything. Yeah, and that's about as unknowable as I am me. Like they are exactly the same you can't conceptualize either. You can't conceptualize God, you can't conceptualize reality, and you can't conceptualize yourself. And what remains is all the same thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's funny. The thought of being the universe, being reality, like even saying, you are the universe. It's like universe is so much, like you start thinking about that, but it's also infinite. And so you if you actually want to keep going instead of trying to conceptualize it as like, an image you see on the James Hubbard telescope or something, like thinking that, oh, that's you, that's me right there. It's something that's in your head. And as you were talking, I had another little Alan Watts ism pop up, how it was something about how action verbs are like nouns, so right now I'm sitting, I'm speaking, I'm seeing, and like that's not to get too tied up in that either, but that's closer to what I am in the moment and what's happening. I go into my room and I start strumming on guitar like I am playing guitar. Like that's what is happening right there. That's closer to what I am. And as soon as it's me playing guitar, it's like there's some sort of conflict, there's some sort of way to do it. Am I doing it correctly as opposed to just being the process? Being the process of playing it. And then there aren't so many considerations or you don't have to start wondering how something's going, because how something's going, how you're doing, and yourself kind of go hand in hand. And without that, when it isn't so much about you being something separate from what's happening, it's the how is more or less irrelevant because that can't be known anyway. And so the question of how is maybe the biggest unknown that you can have. And it goes for how do you do something? Well, you do it and then you do it again. And it's like, how do I play the guitar, for example? And there's a bunch of ways that you could come up with, but the reality is that when you break it down, it's like you press on some strings and then you strum, and you do that in different ways. But the how, as soon as it starts being thought about, it's not what's happening. Like what's happening is like holding it and strumming it, and the how is some sort of thing that's going to almost just only take you away from that. It doesn't bring you closer to the experience. You're as close as you can get. You are it happening. And so, getting tied up in the conceptual, the ideas of being God or being the universe or being reality or any of those things, they can never get you closer to the reality of what that means. They can only take you further away. They can only distract you. They can only complexify the experience, make it a little bit more difficult for yourself, which then makes it more difficult for anyone else. And there's a side of it that maybe you feel good because you feel like you recognize something, but then it goes hand in hand with taking yourself very seriously too. And that sense of seriousness you're talking about on a rainy day, being alone with yourself, it's like I'll find myself being alone and still taking myself seriously, still judging myself for doing something silly. And so even when you're alone, you can take that time to almost practice not doing those things, because the less you do it when you are alone, the less you're going to do it when you're not so much alone, when you are interacting, and because the opportunity's there all the time, but it's unnecessary. It doesn't help to focus on any of those things. So that sense of seriousness is gets sillier and sillier, I think, the more you experience things. And it goes with the how. take myself very seriously and assume that I know how it's going. Like, well, you can't. So, I mean, you can try, but again, it's only going to take you further away, never gets you closer.
Right, and no concept can bring you the experience that it describes. But it can get really, it can be really convincing. But it's like, of course, it's convincing. It's me convincing me, you know, like I'm the inside man. You know? I know all the best reference points. You know, I know exactly, you know, what would convince me, you know, and I also know, you know, I'm the opposite end of that spectrum. You know, how to quote unquote burst my own bubble, which is just like I just don't know. As much as I may convince myself of any concept that I can come up with or hold on to or attach to, I just don't know. And that concept is just another word for an assumption. And that's okay, you know, because there are, you know, quote unquote safe assumptions, you know, when you don't, when you're not treating it like a fact, you're like, maybe this is a tendency to work in this way. There's a high likelihood it will also work in this way during this attempt, but I'm not entirely sure, you know. Every attempt, quote unquote, is a new attempt, you know, because that you're taking in all the new considerations and including the last time you did that, you know, whether the concept is something that you're taking seriously or not, it's still a tool. You know, I'm making a sandwich, you know. Am I trying to make the perfect sandwich? You know, it's no, I'm hungry. And so, you know, we might get a little peanut butter on the table or wherever. And I just learned about like quote unquote like there's a perfect way to make a sandwich. And I laughed when I saw the article that was saying that because they were like, you know, there's like an art form to it. And there's like, you know, when you're layering, like, what's the order that you're doing this in? Like, you know, because you want the juices to like be pairing nicely with the bread. There's different types of bread that absorb sauces. And I'm just like, oh my God. I mean, not that there aren't epic sandwiches, but just sometimes we just really, it's a sandwich. You know? So, there's a perfect one, there's a non-perfect one. And I'm just like, when I am really hungry, every sandwich is the perfect sandwich.
I made a sandwich the other day. I just grabbed a piece of bread and just squeezed some ham on it, threw some ham on it, folded it up. It's like, because sometimes I won't eat for a while throughout the day. And I'll notice some just getting a little bit technical. If you drink a lot of water, your electrolytes can still drop off quite a bit. And so you can start to get a little bit lightheaded. So it's important to get some, you know, sodium, all that stuff, magnesium, potassium, whatever. And a lot of food has that, ham especially, super high sodium. So I was feeling it. I was like, fuck it. And so it was like, it ended up tasting great because I was very hungry and it was also functional and all of that. But yeah, I mean, that goes with how, you know, it's like getting ready in the morning. You know, it's like making the perfect sandwich, making my perfect look. The day I realized,
Pressure, man.
you know, and this wasn't that long ago, that everyone sees you differently and most people don't notice one thing or the other. Like you could have a picture. I remember I showed someone a picture. I think I was super hungover. It was like when I was like 21. I was about 20 pounds heavier, super hungover, eyes were all puffy. And I was like, oh my gosh, I look like a different person. No, you don't. You kind of look very similar to that picture now. And I was like, what? No way. But then it hit me. It's like,
recognize it.
yeah, it's like, I don't know who that is. That's like on Andre or something, you know,
That's
Andy
right.
or whatever. Or Randy at that point. But it's so funny how focused we can get on, you know, on perfect, even an article saying
Concepts.
the perfect sandwich. It's like, what does that mean? Because each and every time you do it, like each and every time you know, going back to guitar, because I'm learning the C chord right now, or learned it. Every time I strum the C chord, it's like, yeah, it's a C chord, but I'm holding it in a different position.
Yes.
You know, the strum is different, and like, there's never going to be actually the same repeated strum. Every time you say a word, every time you say your name, Andrew, like each and every time it's been said a number of times throughout my life, like every time it's been different. Every time I've been different, every time I've said it. And I think when you take that in, not to like, you know, focus on that too much, but when you start to take that in a little bit more, it's like, oh, so it is vital to keep paying attention. Like there's a almost, I don't know, more of an appreciation because you recognize that it's never the same. Like nothing's ever actually repeated as much as we can call it certain things, like a C chord on the guitar. It's just a placement. And it does sound different if it's, if I'm on the first fret and it's like closer to the second fret or further from the second fret. There's a totally different sound. So it never even sounds the same, even if you try and perfectly put it in the same exact spot each and every time. So if everything's shifting all the time, then makes it even clearer that the, focus in your head, the thoughts in your head, you know, they're not even close to it, because even what you're seeing and thinking that things are repeating or the same things happening over and over, that's not the same thing. So,
Yeah. So I think that's where I was going earlier in terms of, the conversation and the intellectualization of it. And it really isn't. Like, to me, it's, again, philosophy is the disease for which it should be the cure. Don't get caught with your head up your ass. That's basically what that means. Like, don't get so caught up in feeling like an intellectual person that you end up just being an intellectual douche. Being intellectual is not the same as having clarity. Knowing a lot of fancy words, knowing a lot of fancy philosophies, knowing a lot of, catchphrases isn't the same as actual recognition. It's not. And so recently I heard tell of somebody who is using dualistic unity in a way that is very much for their own self-aggrandizement. It's very much for how they feel it makes them look, and they're going around canvassing for a political campaign. They're canvassing for people to vote, and basically screaming down their throat that we're all one, we're all one. Why don't you see that? You're selfish, you pricks. And so it doesn't do any good. And I've seen this at retreats. I've seen this with conversations with people outside the community. You really get caught on to like the non-duality thing, or you really get caught on to the we're all one thing. And it feels really good because now you're onto it. You've met the Buddha in the road. And that's why, again, I love the expression, if you meet the Buddha in the road, kill it. Right? Get rid of it. Whatever that right path is not, and it's blinding you. And you can get so caught up in trying to convince people about your philosophy, not realizing it's because you're trying to convince yourself, that you fail to realize that a moment where you're talking to a stranger and they're telling you about something that happened in the day, and you can hear them get frustrated, or you can see it on their face that the smile is no longer in their eyes, it's only on their face. Or you see their shoulders kind of drop as they're feeling disappointed, or you see something that's very human in that moment, and you don't jump in there and go, yeah, because we're all one, and we're all understand. Like, you don't do that, but you can recognize it and then act accordingly. It's not about saying it, because who are you trying to say? If we're all one, who are you trying to convince? Who really needs to know that? Right? But just a moment of just kindness, just a moment of not putting yourself first. A moment of allowing yourself to spend a little time and energy on something that isn't fucking self-serving, that isn't promising to get you somewhere, that actually has nothing to do with you whatsoever. It doesn't hurt you to give up that time. Just those moments. Those are more unifying than any amount of going around telling people, you got to think like we're all one. You got to stop being selfish. You got to do all that shit, because you're just doing it yourself. And the reason that you're so engaged with telling other people is because you're not applying it. Yeah, that's one thing I love about the podcast for me, is that I walked away from the conversation for so very long because I needed to learn that it wasn't about the conversation, that now I can have this conversation here and then leave and not have it for the rest of the day. It's not necessary, right? It's fun, and there's a lot of insight to be had in it, but it's the application. It's the application. It's the one thing that we can't really get across here on the podcast. But that said, that is what is changing. Come season 7, we are going to be bringing in more guests. We're going to be really focused on engagement in a big way, and it's because it really is in the conversation. It's in the not the conversation about the topic, but actually being in the conversation. So that way, when somebody's communicating something to you, whether it's where you want to go in the conversation or not, you're actually fucking listening. You know, that you don't mind volunteering your own personal worldview. You don't mind, sharing an opinion or making a joke that nobody laughs about, that there is actually application in the simple task of just talking, of just communicating with people. And so we're going to be putting a lot more of the focus on that because it gets so easy to get lost in the whole, philosophy, regardless of how often we warn about that. And so we really wanted to take that in, especially hearing about this specific person, because it if there's one, there's probably more, and I just wanted to address that. Like, just stop doing that. Just take it in yourself, and let it reflect in how you treat others, not what you tell them.
Yeah, those who know don't say, those who say don't know. And that's something that I think is honestly fully just settling in a sense for me. I've heard it a number of times, but it really is, it's not even a little bit about, the saying we're all one. This is all, one thing, your reality, I'm reality, I'm you, you're me, all those things. It's almost keeping that inside. It's keeping that inside and making it informing the action. Is it informative, or is it something that you're just fucking yabbing on about? Because if it's something you're yabbing on about, it's probably not as informative, because that's what you're doing. That's the action that you're taking, is talking about it, is expressing it. And the reality is, you can say it till you're blue in the face. It doesn't do much at all. Like, I think there's a phrase, like, people don't remember what you say, and maybe not even what you do, but how you make them feel or something. But it's closer to, they don't remember what you say, but they remember what you do. Or, it's not about what you say, it's about what you do. And you can make your doing the philosophizing, the expression of the philosophizing. I've spent a little bit more time on Reddit recently, and spending some time in the non-duality thread and channel. And that's pretty much entirely conversation about the conversation, about it being the case. And it's a lot of just back and forth of, oh, there is no me-ness, nothing is happening, like, this is all just what is. And it's like this sort of focus. And I get it. I think in terms of the saying versus doing, the talking about it versus the application, I've definitely noticed plenty in myself where that has been the focus. So I get it. And sort of the feelings, it can feel good to feel like you're sort of in this know, in the recognition, in the conversation. Like, you get it, other people don't. And you can tell they don't because of their focuses. They're prioritizing this. But in application, in what you do, it can be applied to anything that you do, any conversation that you have about everything. When it's informing the application, there is nothing that's like off limits to talk about. Even, there's been parts of me that has veered away from, certain activities, watching certain things, certain types of shows or movies or whatever, certain types of actions, and it's not to say, even with like lifting weights, for example, it's not to say that in itself, that action is, making it about you or not making it about you. It's like there's a way to do it that's maybe a little more vain, that's maybe a little bit more about you. And then there's a way to do it where it's just, basic, your body. I notice my quads are a little stronger than my hamstrings. And so, You know, if I work out, I do a little more hamstring stuff instead of it being about like, how does this make me look? And so it's not really the thing that you're doing, but it's what's informing it, you know, where is the focus? And when that's the case, life gets a little bit more basic because you can kind of keep yourself away from certain things because you feel like you're doing the right thing, because that's something that's, you know, a unifying action versus a divisive action. It's like, what if there weren't those and it was about how you applied it? Like where, and over time, those, you know, things that you choose to do shift, and like where you prioritize your focus and time tends to shift. But it's really not even, it's not even the words a little bit. It's from time to time it happens. That's what's going on there. Sure, but to try and shove it down people's throats or run a political campaign, which I'm kind of curious about that now, or with that narrative, it's forceful. It's as much as you can say, it's like, oh, I'm trying to help other people relax and let go. It's like, are you relaxed as you're stressfully fucking screaming it at people and trying to convince them? And I think that can be a good telltale sign, is like, are you trying to convince someone of something? And if that's the case, you're probably making it a little bit more about the conversation than about the action.
And you'll know because you're frustrated and disappointed.
I'm not screaming. Well, I am.
I just want to make sure you get it, because it's gonna help.
And you treat people like they're you.
Yeah. I'll start doing it when they start doing it.
That's right. You first.
You first. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. But just that is the absurdity of it, you know, or that's an absurd experience that we are all in right now. And I appreciate that absurdity more and more as I relax, as I take things less seriously, as I attach less and less, you know, and there is no goal to not attach. There is no goal to be in a state of constant ease. There's just less of goal setting, you know. It's just things are happening, you know. Opinion opinions can bubble up, you know, but they don't have to take any time and attention. You know, it's just like, oh yeah, that's happening too. All right, well, what else is happening? You know, and being able to just take in as much as you can, you know, with the amount of, you know, availability and relaxation. Oh snap.
And just like that, our video has stopped working, but that doesn't matter because our audio is still working, and this is a podcast episode,
Right.
not a video episode. So we're not too worried, and we only have a short period of time left for this episode anyway. I did want to say, just because there's so much happening right now, um, thank you to our audience, just for being out there, just for being you, because we've grown quite a bit over the last 3 years. Just whatever is possible is, you know, unknown. But there is some really cool stuff that is coming up, and we're really excited to share it with you. You know, it's funny because recently I talked about this in episode 41, I believe, but recently a person who was long forgotten from a very dark period of my life has surfaced and is now part of the community that we've been working with and establishing connections with. And I went through this whole period of just kind of reassessing all that and going through, you know, the stories I used to tell myself and all of that stuff. But that's all stuff I have to do on my own. Like I literally just kind of sat in bed the day after running into this person and closed my eyes and just kind of went through laying there and watching my brain do all the things that it was doing and just not attaching to it. You know, just remembering that I'm not the same person I was. Nothing's the same as it was, moment to moment to moment. But that process of going through all that, of finding my calm, of not reacting to it, all of that, you don't see any of that. You don't hear any of that. You're not there for that. You're not there for that. And we're not there for you going through that stuff. We can't be. There's no possible way. And so I just wanted to say, I'm really happy that you're doing it, because, regardless of why you think you would do it, like maybe you are the person that is out there trying to get people to vote, and at the same time, trying to get them to believe as you do. The fact is that you're doing that, and one day you're going to go, oh Christ, and you're going to feel a little bit dickish. You might feel a lot dickish. Don't fight that feeling. Take it in. Realize it doesn't mean you're an actual dick, but that you have the capacity to be dickish. And if you have the capacity to hurt people, you will be a lot more careful about doing so. But if you never allow yourself to actually feel the emotion that goes with hurting people, or the emotion that goes with telling yourself a story, the emotion that goes with judging yourself or judging others, if you never allow yourself to feel these things, you never learn from them. And so easy, it's so easy to just go, oh, no, we're all one. That's just a story. I'm not going to take it personally, blah, blah, blah. Feel that shit. Don't define yourself by it, but feel it. And I know you do, to the best of your ability, whether you realize it or not. And I just want to say thank you. It may go unnoticed. It may be a thankless job, but it changes your life, and your life is connected to all of our lives. So every time you just allow yourself to go through the discomfort of taking that hit to your ego, the discomfort of having to let go of your idea of yourself that doesn't reconcile with the impact that you're actually having, you mature and you grow. And nobody's ever going to go, I saw that, well done, because it's happening inside, but I saw that, well done.
Because I think along with this, focusing on the conversation, for example, there can be this sense of avoidance, passing of responsibility with feelings when, say, you do something hurtful, and then you feel bad about it, down all the depth of those things. And then, if you jump back to the conversation, like, oh, don't take anything personally, not taking anything personally, you can rope that in to that experience too. And it's kind of like, take it personally for a sec. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. Don't tie yourself to it. Don't hold on to it, but understand that, oh, if this is something that happened and I feel certain stuff about it, feel bad, awful, terrible, like, it's probably indicative of some of the ways that someone else may be feeling. And so that's a component of the empathy, I think, is not running from those, understanding that it doesn't mean that you're strong because you feel them, but there is strength that can be built from being willing to feel them, from not running away necessarily, or understanding that, you can handle those feelings. You don't have to try and distract yourself from those feelings. And a way to distract yourself is to, continue to think about yourself in certain ways. And there's a sobering experience of feeling, and being willing to, because I think sometimes with thoughts and perspectives and ideas of yourself, there can be certain feelings that, you want to gravitate towards. If you're assuming that you're great, you want feelings to be good. If you're assuming you're terrible, you want feelings to be bad. And that's informative based on, for example, music. When someone's feeling down, a lot of times they listen to sad music to really feel those things, if they almost desire to do so. If they're feeling up, it's rare that you want to listen to really sad music if you're feeling happy. And I think, sometimes perspectives of ourselves can be those songs, and if we're not willing to understand that, no, we have we have the capability to be that entire spectrum. Two, there's going to be prioritization of certain things and an almost an unwillingness, or you don't want to feel certain things, and so you will focus on other things, but it doesn't mean that those things go away. And I think there is absolutely a maturity in understanding that you are the full spectrum, and that informs your interactions. You can more clearly see that everyone is that full spectrum, from the darkest to the dark side of that spectrum to the lightest of the light side of that spectrum. And that's all we got is our own experience. So if you're unwilling to see it in yourself, you're going to be unwilling to see the potential in others. And if you judge someone in one way, it's going to be really hard for you to see them, see the other side of the spectrum. And that goes for both sides. And a lot of it is reflective of how you see yourself, how you want to see yourself. And, someone who you see as closer to how you see yourself, you're going to assume is similar to the assumptions you're making about yourself. And someone that doesn't seem like as close, you're going to almost inevitably assume certain things about them in the other direction. But it comes from you. It still comes from you. And so it's vital to not hold on so tightly to a perspective of yourself. And it's quite frankly unnecessary. And like we were talking about earlier, the thinking, the focus on yourself or how you're doing doesn't get you closer to being able to give something time and attention, to be able to pay attention to what's actually real, to what's actually happening. It can only ever take you further away. And so if anything, the informative side of not being what you think and not turning that into an idea is that you're not separating yourself from the experience. And that goes with an entire spectrum of things. But if it isn't even the sides of the spectrum that you don't want to see, it doesn't at least add an additional heaviness to it, because you're not distracting yourself so much from the reality of being that full spectrum.
Yeah, it's a full experience, and there's so much, but there's also so much to us, and there's no separation, and we seem to think that there is, because it's so easy to convince ourselves that, it must only be me, or I must be at the mercy of reality or existence. But, it is very much just a reflection of everything that is. And that's a lot. And we don't have to take it all in one moment, and yet it all exists in this one moment. And so it's a fun paradox when you don't need it to be. And on that note, we're pretty much going to wrap up our DU Raw. So thank you so much for joining us, everyone. It has been great to be back, and we look forward to many more chats and sharing many more experiences as they unfold.
Oh yeah, I think we have a roundtable tomorrow.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Looking forward to it. Might turn into a call-in show. Stay tuned, everybody. We'll let you know. Have a great day, though, and yeah, this has been fun.
Absolutely. Great to be back. Bye, everyone.